This episode, we feature a healer and health expert. He is helping others with cancer recovery, addictions, PTSD, stress, chronic pain, anxiety, and many other physical and mental, and perhaps even spiritual aspects of their health. Author of Mastermind, Master Life, and Take Charge of Your Cancer. I'd like to welcome Norman Plotkin to the show. How you doing, Norman?
I'm great. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's excellent to have a guest such as yourself on the show. This is a topic that I'm very passionate about. It's one that I don't often get a chance to have somebody like yourself on my show. So pretty kind of excited to get started with that. I love the type of work that you're doing. I think in, many Western medicine, perhaps not saying that I'm anti-science or that I don't believe in, Western medicine and things like that. But I think oftentimes with a lot of the stuff that they do, some of it being good, but a lot of it is more or less treating symptoms rather than the root of a problem. So maybe we can get into a little bit of that. I guess, what's your background?
Well, what a long, strange trip it's been. I came to this in quite a circuitous route. I grew up on a ranch in the mountains of eastern California, and went in the Marine Corps, and did a stint in the Marine Corps. Got out, worked in the oil fields, worked in a rock plant like Fred Flintstone, making little rocks out of big rocks, and then I was building cable TV, and my brother was killed in a car accident. Kind of woke me up. He was pretty mad, and like I never had to try. He worked really hard, and so I kind of regrouped and walked onto a community college campus in San Diego. Moved in with my mom, and never looked back. I was speech and debate and student government, and transferred to Sac State, where the state government is here in California, and got an internship. My first semester was a clerk in the legislature, then became a consultant. I ran campaigns. I did public policy. I was a policy consultant for the health and insurance committees. Then I became a lobbyist for the medical association and represented physicians. And then I started my own firm. For 13 years, I represented clients in the petroleum, energy, automotive space. And I love the public policy. I love the strategy. But the politics, the money, it's dirty, and it didn't sit with me. So I got sick. I had cancer. I had a papillary carcinoma, which is thyroid cancer. They removed my thyroid and lymph nodes, and 5 lymph nodes, and I had 2 rounds of radiation. And initially, I just wanted to get back to normal. What I didn't realize was that normal that I knew was what made me sick. And so I drank too much. I ate rich food. I had stress, through the roof. And so as I realized that the return to my previous life wasn't in my best interest, teachers began to appear, and I went in a whole nother direction. My marriage didn't survive the cancer and that whole thing. And it's never just about the cancer. There's so much more. So I moved to LA, and initially I'd taken a job as an executive director of a trade association. And I did that for a year, and they didn't renew my contract when I started to work on their ethics. And I'm like, well, now what, right? And so I was just kind of divinely led. It just so happens I was living in Burbank, and there's the only nationally accredited school of hypnotherapy is in Tarzana, there in the valley. And turns out I knew someone who had gone there. We had dinner. I talked to them, and I was kind of, like I said, divinely led. So I spent the next 18 months studying hypnosis, hypnotherapy, and initially I had to kind of keep a foot in both worlds. I took a job as a lobbyist in 16 Western states for a former automotive client, so I could make some money while I started, doing hypnotherapy on nights and weekends. And the universe kind of just put me in the right place to care for my parents. At the end of the last year of each of their lives, they hadn't been together for many years, but they both had a stroke and died within a year of each other. And so I was able to, if I'd have been that self-important lobbyist, that I wouldn't have been there. I'd have sent flowers, you know what I mean? So So it was all part of my soul's expansion and my soul contract that I fulfilled with my parents. And then I moved back to Sacramento to be closer to my kids. And I worked for a little while for my publisher, the author incubator, while I, again, set up my office and began to see clients and make a little money on the side while I tried to make a go of this. And um, so I'm in both feet now, and it literally, this is my soul's purpose.
That's interesting. You talked about, maybe going to school to learn hypnotherapy, but it's obvious that you've had some kind of understanding or awakening, though, because I mean, you're talking about soul purpose and divinely led, that kind of thing. Where did you kind of get that from?
Well, I studied world religions in college. It's one thing to study, and I had questions. I've been to Nepal. I've trekked in the Himalayas. Studied Buddhism at the Monkey Temple in Kathmandu, and I was married to a Muslim girl for a little while. I converted to Islam in order to marry her. I have accepted Jesus Christ. So you know what I mean? It's like I'm a student of life and spirituality. I've read all of the books from the Torah to the Quran to the Bible to the Bhagavad Gita. I know the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. So I'd always had that interest, but it was kind of like I was the survey kid, nothing ever kind of stuck. And so when I got sick and I realized, it was a shamanic healing crisis. I had cancer and it came back. I had to have a second round of radiation, scared the shit out of me. And so this is the first time I knew fear. And it comes up like the world's worst esophageal reflux in your mouth, and you can taste it. Right? I didn't know I was only 5'7". I rode bulls, and it was a Marine. It's like, and so now I'm like, I knew fear. So teachers began to appear. Wayne Dyer, The Power of Intention, Carolyn Meese, Anatomy of the Spirit, Deepak Chopra, Quantum Healing, Eckhart Tolle. You can read Eckhart Tolle's Awakening to Your Essential Purpose and still not know what your essential purpose is. You really it needs a workbook with it. Anyway, so
yeah, those are some good reads. Some of the work that you do I know I've mentioned the guy before on my show, but Dr. Joe Dispenza, I don't know if you're familiar with some of his work, but
yep, I've seen him speak and I've read several of his books. And I'm sorry, go ahead and finish
I was just going to say I'm currently working on through some diabetic issues with some of his teachings and readings, and fascinating stuff, man.
Oh yeah. So Dr. Joe will tell you that change is hard, and it usually requires a breakup, a job loss, or an illness. And so he studies, by the way, Dr. Joe went to the same hypnotherapy college I went to before he became a chiropractor. And then now he's just off the charts doing brain studies and all kinds of fascinating, cool stuff. But he'll tell you that if I ask you, why do you do that? You'll say, well, 20 years ago, this happened to me. But memory is completely unreliable. You won't remember the details. In fact, you'll recount them incorrectly. You remember how it made you feel. Because when you have a feeling, it creates an emotion, and an emotion creates a chemistry in your body, and that chemistry gets imprinted in your body. And so now you don't know exactly the details, but you know how it made you feel. So now you're going to act in a way that reflects that feeling. So you're living a predictable future based on an unreliable past that's robbing you of your precious present moment. And so, he'll also tell you that we have 70,000 thoughts every day, and 90% of them are the same as they were yesterday. So it's super important that before you launch into your day and the 70,000 thoughts, be quiet and still. Listen. Prayer is when we talk to God, or our concept of God or the divine, and meditation is when we listen. And being quiet and still and allowing the universe to speak to you and be open to what you hear and allow and accept. These are the challenges for the Western mind. We want to just charge in, fix it, take the hill. I'm going to just do this. Now, you can, like Dr. Joe, broke his back and racing his bike. Somebody crashed into the race course and ran him over with a Jeep or a Toyota Land Cruiser, and his doctor friends, when he was in traction, that thought he was nuts because he wasn't going to have surgery, and he did through meditation what others would have had no guarantee that it would work, but they would have taken the surgery. So it's the mind is a powerful thing. And so I was led to the power of the mind as I went through, reshaping my perspective and my mind and ditching my identity as a lobbyist. I had a lot of ego invested in being a lobbyist and driving a Porsche around and wearing Italian silk suits. And you know what I mean? There was a lot of ego invested in that. So,
yeah. And this cancer experience, I mean, is that ultimately kind of what led you for a different way of trying to heal or understand how health works?
yeah, I would not let them remove my thyroid again. But I'd been a lobbyist for doctors. I knew hundreds of them. I took the high percentage uh, clinical treatment, just the high percentage therapy. This is what they, and they're doing what they're taught. And so what I found was that there's a whole, there are people who take a different route and use the power of their mind, and that we all have mutations. All right. Cancer is just a condition where the mutations replicate rapidly. And they don't know. I mean, they've been studying it forever. They still don't know. Western medicine is based on materialism, cell, tissue, organ, system. But we're moving past Newtonian mechanics and materialism. We're moving into the age of Aquarius from Pisces, and we're moving toward energy and the quantum field. And so energy, not material. Subatomic particles, when physicists are having an enlightening, a spiritual awakening. Many of them had come from an atheistic or agnostic tradition, but now they're embracing the Goldilocks effect, right? The moon is just right to affect our tides, and the sun is just right to not burn us and not freeze us, right? Just like not too close, not too far, just right. Jupiter's gravity is just right to keep the asteroid belt away from crashing into us, right? So when they went to study if matter has a dual nature like light does, both a particle and a wave, and they began to study these subatomic particles, quarks and neutrinos, when they wanted to see if it was a wave, it acted like a wave. When it wanted to see if it was a particle, it acted like a particle, giving rise to what's known as the observer effect. And now they're learning all kinds of stuff, nonlinear, non-local, like two bits of matter operating on each other in a non-local, non-linear fashion. Like we have so much to learn. We think we know, we don't know anything. And so, so energy and our own, I mean, look how we are just dumbing ourselves down. We got a little device in our hand and everything at our fingertips.
We are, man.
Right? We don't use our senses. The pineal glands. I mean, we have a way to know. I've experienced all of the clairs, and clairaudience, clairgustance, clairvoyance. And so when you open your mind to these things, another book was The Power of the Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. I mean, so when I began to realize that not only do we have a role in our own, like this is a hard one for people. I had a role in developing my cancer, and I'm not just a victim. There was lifestyle choices, and I was running around stressed out all the time. My adrenal glands.
Absolutely.
So I read a couple books about cancer specifically. I read about a Dr. Carl Simonton from the 70s who was a radiological oncologist, and he postulated the theory after seeing lots and lots of people with that. We repress our emotional experiences and our traumas, and if we don't process those emotions, they accumulate, and at some point the subconscious mind perceives death as a way out and will begin to modulate our neurochemistry in a fashion that suppresses our immune system. And so if you can reverse that process, and so then there's Bruce Lipton and the theory of epigenetics, that we can modulate our own neurochemistry and even in fact our own genetic expression. So we are powerful.
It seems as though we are creators of our own reality and our own health. I mean, it seems that way. A lot of things are pointing that direction.
Yeah.
And I've heard
So
that too about the genetics, being able to change the expressions through thought.
yeah.
That,
So think about there's everyone knows of the placebo effect, right? So any drug that goes to market is compared against a sugar pill, an inert substance, and 30% of the time the sugar pill works.
yep.
Can't argue with it. And the drug coming to market has to do better than the sugar pill. Imagine that. And so there's also the nocebo effect. You know that there's a study at Harvard, I think 75% of medical students suffer the symptoms of the diseases that they're studying. You can make yourself better with the sugar pill. You can make yourself sick by paying attention to these kind of things. In quantum healing, Deepak Chopra talks about the fact that we've come to this place where we're very good at chemistry, and we can synthesize a drug in the laboratory. But the human body and its organs have an intelligence. And so when we introduce a chemical concoction that's made in the laboratory, it lacks the intelligence of the human chemistry, and that's why there's side effects and inefficacy. So it can have the same chain of substances, and you can write out its chemical composition, and it can match the chemical composition of what they extracted from your body, but there's something else that's missing.
Well, I think, part of it is the materialistic view, right? I mean, I think, that's a large portion of it. I mean, we're looking at things all wrong.
Totally.
What motivates you to help others? What's driving you to do this type of work? I mean, because what you're doing is, I think it's wonderful. We need more people like you in the world.
Thank you. My mom was a bleeding heart, and I've always had a sense of a desire to help and be helpful. It was diminished by my sense of ambition for a long time, but after the cancer experience, I'll tell you, Wayne Dyer's power of intention. Put yourself into the service of others. So at the time, I was studying the archangels and the etheric realm, and I wrote a letter to Archangel Michael. Dear Archangel Michael, I have these gifts. People have paid me millions, but I want to put myself into the service of others. Please give me some direction. Signed my name, took it in the backyard and burned it. And I went into the back of the house in the darkened bedroom, closed the door, and sat and did japa meditation. Namo Narayana, Namo Narayana, Namo Narayana for 20 minutes. My chest was just resonating. And then you do a cool down, you just sit quiet and still for a few minutes. And I sensed this powerful, energetic force come down the hall through the closed door and stand right next to me. And I'm like, I was afraid. And then I was made to understand that there was nothing to be afraid of. And I just sensed that power. I called my psychic friend. I'm like, what was that? She goes, wait, you wrote a letter to Archangel Michael and then did japa meditation and sensed a powerful energetic force and you don't know what it is. I'm like, okay, all right, I get it. So, so I took seriously Wayne Dyer's The Power of Intention. Stop drinking and want to be in the service of others. And so, you have to extinguish that ego. You have to reduce, influence of outside substances that diminish your capacity to be this channel. And you know what's great? The little bit of ego I have is just so tickled and thrilled when I'm able to channel. I get stuff. My client's mom came through me the other day and said she's here and she's proud of you. I got her name and stuff, and then just being a vessel and I sit and listen to people's stuff, and the thing that made me a really good analyst and consultant makes me a really good reflective listener and problem solver, and I'm able to connect dots that people are right in front of them and they don't see. I had this client, her mom was overbearing and controlling, and she was always afraid, and she got it away right away and joined the Army and spent 20 years in the Army and always felt like she wasn't doing it right. And I said, well, did your command make you feel that way? She said, no, And I'm like, oh, how about now? Are you married? Yeah. My husband, and everything was the same. I'm like, you married your mom, and the army was your mom. And until you make peace with your mom and that relationship, it's all gonna, our inner worlds are mirrored by our outer worlds. And until we make our inner world right, we're gonna get it back reflected tenfold. So she's like, oh, how could I miss that? How did you see it? I'm like, I said, well, you're too close. And I see a lot of this. There are patterns in the human experience, and a lot of it has to do with, I go to inner child right away and family structures. And this is the fertile ground to give you an understanding of where that your human operating system got kind of some corrupted code.
On that, I think you're touching on some of this. Can you talk something about the subconscious program?
Yeah. There's a group in the United Kingdom called the Human Givens Project, and doing some great stuff, and they're forward thinking about hypnosis and hypnotherapy. And one of the things that they talk about is that when you're in vitro, you're getting a download. You're in REM when you're a fetus, and you're getting a download from your mom, both from her subconscious and the collective. And then when you're born, you are in hypnosis from 0 to 10. You are mirroring and matching, you're sponging everyone in your sphere of influence. And this becomes your programming. And forevermore, you're going to measure your conscious mind. At 10, you begin to develop your personality and your ego, and you begin to develop and everything. But everything, that logic, reason, analysis, decision-making, all the realm of the conscious mind that we think is in control, all takes in the data from the 5 senses and measures it against the subconscious, and so the subconscious programming. And so what'll happen is if what the conscious mind is comparing to the subconscious mind, it doesn't comport, there's incongruency, the conscious mind will come up with a rationalization. I know the pack of cigarettes says that the Surgeon General says I'm going to die if I smoke these, but Aunt Sally smoked 2 packs a day until she was 90, or I was going to die anyway, and I'll just be old. You see the rationalizations that serve to overcome that logical
Right.
assessment. So yeah, the programming is established from 0 to 10, and you are in a heightened state of awareness, and you mirror and match and sponge from the world around you.
With that being said, what do you believe sickness is then? Is that something that is coming from deep within?
Well, dis-ease, okay? Dis-ease. We've been obsessed with the germ theory, and we're in the middle of just some silliness right now based on germ theory thinking. And so life is a contact sport, and we get nicked up along the way. And if we don't process the emotions that are associated with those nicks, we're going to get sick. We're going to have a neurosis or neuroses, or we're going to create disease. That's what we do. We create disease. And when you're balanced, when your energy is balanced, when your thoughts are balanced, when your emotions are balanced, we have a powerful system designed to self-perpetuate. It's really amazing. And if we put more faith in our own immune system, that just, I don't want to get too political on you here, but
Yeah. Don't do that. I've already been in trouble for that a couple times.
Okay. So
I know where you're going with that, and I
Okay.
agree. I agree 100%.
Okay, great.
The importance of hypnotherapy in your work.
Well, my scope of practice requires me to perform hypnosis. I can get away with a little cognitive behavioral stuff to teach people the connection between their thoughts and their feelings and their behavior, but I have to do hypnosis. So that's my scope of practice, and it's cool. We go into hypnosis every day. You can be driving home from work and end up in the driveway and not remember the trip, and that was hypnosis. They call it highway hypnosis. You can be watching an exciting movie and feel like you're in it. That's hypnosis. Or reading a good book and feel like you're in it. any, focused concentration while you're kind of deeply relaxed that transports you into kind of a trance state. Deep meditation can be hypnotic. Um, so I describe it to people this way. Think of it like your conscious mind is a Labrador retriever, and I throw it a stick so that I can speak directly to your subconscious mind. And we speak to the subconscious mind in suggestion, imagery, metaphor. It's the dream world. So hypnosis means Greek. In Greek, it means sleep, but you're not asleep. It's heightened concentration during deep relaxation. And so then once I get you into that trance, then it's easy to, I engage your senses and through storytelling and imagery and taking you on a journey, and your eyes will be in REM, and it'll be the dream state. And so this is, that unconscious world that really controls us.
And when you tap into that, I mean, you're able to help bring forth change within people, right?
Yeah. So um, a lot of it is recognizing what it is. I get a lot of people come in for something and it's entirely different. Weight loss is, it's that last little bit of weight that they're protecting themselves from the outside world with this layer of emotional protection. I had a young woman who stuttered, and I was trying to get at, what was going on. And in the second session, she came in and said, "Oh, my mom and I were fighting with my brother." I'm like, "Well, tell me about your brother." "Oh, he's at Stanford and he plays sports, and he's, it turns out he was a golden boy, sucks the oxygen out of every room you ever walked in." And from the time she was little, she had, in order to get attention, instead of her brother getting all the attention, she developed a stuttering. And once she realized that that's why she did it and decided that she was ready to let go of it, she did. And so, um, this is the power of the subconscious mind, rewriting the story. We tell ourselves stories, and we become wedded to the stories, because more often than not, we're getting what's called secondary gain. We're getting something from this sickness or this disease or this condition. It's attention, sympathy. Like, there's a whole host of things that we get as a result of having a condition and holding on to it. We're not even aware that we're receiving this benefit, and say, "Yeah, I want to get better. I want to get rid of this." But then they don't take the direct action that'll allow them to do so. I mean,
They,
it's
they may not know the direct action either, though, right? I
true.
mean, if you come
Yep.
from a materialistic point of view, I mean,
Yeah.
you're going to see doctors about things, and they're giving you medications that
Totally.
are just band-aiding things, and then oftentimes the medications lead to other health issues over time. Um, that's interesting. So with that, the importance then of mindset when becoming healthy, or just understanding, maybe not dwelling on past situations, or being able to work through past situations so that you can live in the current moment, I guess.
Well, that's right. You have to resolve the things you've experienced and understand them for what they were. You have to, forgiveness is big. If you're mad at somebody, who do you think it hurts? I'm like, you're carrying this baggage around. So a lot of times I do a lot of forgiveness work, a lot of inner child, go back and love on that little kid inside you and tell them it's going to be okay. Um, the symptoms managers is, Western medicine, because, and that's where they go because their employer pays for it, and they don't have to pay anything, and they just go and they get to tell their story. And the victimhood is just rampant, and people are externalizing everything to the outside world. It's like he said, she did, the government, the Rona. It's like they don't take responsibility for anything. Viktor Frankl is famous for saying that between stimulus and response, between action and reaction, is a space, and in that space lies your power, because you get to choose what kind of human being you're going to be. So if you react and have diarrhea of the mouth, or come unglued, then you just leaked your power to that person who yanked your chain. If instead you say, "I'm going to come from a place of love and compassion, and I'm going to meet you where you are, and you be you and I'll be me, and I'm just going to stay in a place of love," then you've retained your power, and you retained your strength and your ability to cope with any situation. That's the other thing. I have people come up with an icon, an image that represents love, And throughout the day, 50, 60 times, just bring that image into their heart space. Because it's A Course in Miracles. This is the Reader's Digest version. Your birthright is love. It resides in your heart space, and its opposite is fear. If you're not coming from a place of love, you're coming from a place of fear. And in any moment, you can decide to come from love instead of fear. And so between space, that space is your power.
I think that's well put. And then, I mean, there's obviously some critical spiritual elements to everything too, right? I mean, you can't just, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, the term, but I like where you're going with this. What are your thoughts on that? Like, as far as just having a sense of spirituality from within, because I mean, you kind of need that to maybe even to help motivate change or understanding, right?
Oh, yeah. So I'm certified in dealing with loss, and I help a lot of people deal with loss. Both my parents have transitioned and 3 siblings. And so, so if you believe that at the end you just become worm dirt, you're destined and doomed to have not live the life. You see, I'm reading the Tibetan book on living and dying right now. If you prepare for and accept a wonderful, beautiful death, you can have a wonderful, beautiful life. Death is a part of life. If you fear and push and resist, you're gonna have difficulty through life. And so, so my first book, Take Charge of Your Cancer, it's the 7 proven steps to healing and recovery. And learn to meditate, radically change your diet, deepen your spirituality, commune with your subconscious mind, release repressed emotions, take charge of your healthcare, and have a reason to live. Those are the 7 steps. And I didn't make any of them up, but I found my way to them. And it turns out that everyone who survives cancer does these things. And so, with respect to your question, deepening your spirituality, like, no loving God comes up with something like hell. So organized religions,
I would agree with that.
Yeah, organized religions it's been all about control. Man trying to control other man and women, and guilt and shame and all this stuff. It's like, I think God is probably more like a woman, Sophia, the goddess. But it's about love, and love. God resides in all of us. And that's that love that I have people bring into their heart space. And we're connected to each other. This whole 6-foot thing is such BS, because that's where I pick up your heart energy, the electricity from your heart, that divine that resides within your heart space. I pick you up at about 6 feet, and I know little bits about you. I sense them before you open your mouth. And the divine resides in all of us. I once took my kids to Universal Studios the last weekend of the summer. It was a zoo, and it cost a fortune to get in. And so we get through the gate, and my kids know I was a Marine, so I break out the map, and we're going to route ourselves, and we're going to get what do you want? What do you want? We're going to do everything. We're going to route it in the most efficient fashion, and we're going to assault this and have fun, darn it. So
right.
we've got ourselves mapped out, and we're ready to go, and we turn, and there's every size and shape and color and head garb and stuff, and people are on their phones standing in the middle of and I'm like, and I just, they're all little drops of God, and I love them all. And no sooner did I reframe my perspective, it opened up and we ran through it. It can be that immediate. It can be, if you allow it. And so loving each other. I lead a Saturday night meditation, a group virtual meditation. We started it a year ago at the beginning of the most recent troubles, as the English say. And it's about staying in a place of love and loving each other and loving all of our fellow humans and connecting with them on a virtual, energetic plan. And so there's no way to spirit but through the divine. There's something larger than us. It's It's if you're scientific, if you're religious, it doesn't really matter because there's plenty. Dr. Neo is doing, experiments and changing water just by thought. The molecules of water, just changing them by a thought process alone. There's just examples of it. The observer effect, the Goldilocks effect. I mean, we can just rattle them off. Look at mathematics. It's just the symmetry of a tree, the interconnectedness of it all. Humans are so anthrocentric. It's, you know what I mean? It's like we're not the center of the universe.
Right.
So
I think you touched on an important thing that about death and about I think it's important to maybe understand death and overcome that fear in order to live life, kind of like what you were mentioning. I think that's so true in a lot of ways. And you don't really start living life until you come to terms with that.
That's right. So we are spiritual beings living a temporary biological existence. Our souls are eternal. And we come here to learn lessons in this very dense emotional place. It's the only place where emotion exists in the universe. And we come here to learn lessons. And we get the same lesson over and over and over until we learn it. And when we learn it, we get a new lesson. And then when our time here is done, when our chi, our prana is exhausted, we transition back to panpsychism, that light that the near-death people have experienced is God, love, Sophia. We return to the universal panpsychism, and our soul is reunited with all the other souls in love and light. And then we rest for a little while, and we get a new assignment. And here we come, hopefully to learn new lessons, not the same old ones.
It's kind of a bit different, my point of view on death, and like you were talking about returning to the universe, or the whatever you want to call it, consciousness. But I think oftentimes here lately, especially when somebody I know has passed away, oftentimes people are like, well, it's so sad. And no, it's not sad. Be happy for them. They're transitioning into a much better place and a much better time for them. Be sad maybe for the people on earth that are still grieving for their loss, but don't be sad for the person that's passed.
Yeah, it's misplaced. It's the sadness of those who remain, and so it's our job to carry them on in our heart space. They live on in our hearts and our minds, and we share about them. And there's a great poem by Holland, who's a 19th century professor of divinity at Oxford. It's death is nothing at all. You're just gone for an interval and slipped away in the other room, perhaps. To make no mention of my name with any sadness or pretense. Call me what you always called me. And we're separated for an interval. I'll see you again.
Yeah, I love that. I love the thought too of, people, I've heard people mention death as an illusion, that it's not really a real thing. I mean, maybe in this form or this body that you currently reside in, there's a death, but we continue on. That's wonderful stuff. One thing I like about what you're doing is it mentions on your website that you're helping others to overcome issues like anxiety and things without the forms of medications and stuff like that.
Yeah. So depression is when we are living in the past, anxiety when we're living in the future. When we remain in the precious present moment, where we don't suffer those maladies. So here, let's talk physiological about what's going on. Evolutionary forces have developed within humans. Back in the day, the saber-toothed tiger jumps up, we got to grab a stick and fight it or run like hell. Today, under social norms, you can't run, can't fight. So what happened when that saber-toothed tiger presented? We had adrenaline rushed into our blood, and our blood went from our internal organs out to our extremities, our arms and legs, so we could run or fight. So we can't run or fight now, and we have this adrenalized blood in our extremities and nothing to do with it. So guess what happens? We become super anxious because there's nothing, and and as an intermediary, dude, you can go chop some wood. You got you got a little frustrated, you go chop some wood. There's no wood chopping, you know. There's no saber tooth to fight. There's this moment where our autonomic nervous system has done what our autonomic nervous system does: switch from sympathetic to parasympathetic and back again. And so there are some things that we can do, like stop mouth breathing. 3 slow, deep breaths into your nose, out through your mouth. I give people an anchor. I'll do this in hypnosis and I'll give this to them. And then later they can revivify the relaxation experienced in hypnosis by taking 3 slow, deep breaths and using their anchor. Right? And then there's anticipatory anxiety. You can be worried about something and get yourself so worked up that you made yourself anxious. It's all in your own head.
Well, and your body reacts to that, right? It makes the chemistry in your body saying, wow, there's something crazy going on externally that I need to deal with. And I mean, that's not healthy either.
No, it's as if it exists and you created it.
Yeah. And that's kind of like you were, it'd be the same thing if you're reliving, like, say, a traumatic moment in your past and you constantly think about it, or you keep bringing it back into, it's like you're reliving that same event over and over and over.
Well, that's right. So what happens is folks who experience trauma, they become hypervigilant and they relive it and over and over and over, and they they can become obsessive and compulsive. So what I do is, you can't, the law of opposites says you can't be relaxed and anxious at the same time. So when I take them deep into hypnosis and they're deeply relaxed, and I bring that event up and they realize it can't hurt them and let it go. See, what happens is this, the subconscious mind is the same thing that keeps your temperature 98.6 and your heart rate, and so you don't have to relearn how to ride a bike over and over or drive a stick shift. Athletes, musicians, and performers, they practice, and then they give it to their subconscious mind and they get in the zone. So the same thing is happening now. You have this event, it's like, you develop this behavior. Well, that event is gone. It can no longer hurt you, but you got this behavior, and the subconscious mind is afraid to let it go because it might be exposed to that scary thing. And so what we do is we bring it up and let it go, bring it up. It's called circle therapy. Let it go, bring it up. And suddenly the subconscious mind realizes it's no longer a threat, and the behavior that was developed to meet that threat it can be let go.
That's well said. I mean, you've touched on this a few times, but guests like you, I always want maybe just for you to go a little deeper in on it, the importance of meditation. Because I think that I ask this question a lot, but I think it's important for the listeners that they understand from, experts like yourself, how important it is to meditate and meditate correctly.
My turning point was, so I had cancer. It came back, had to have a second round of radiation. My ex-wife had something else going on, and I was about to lose my 4,000 square foot house and my fast cars and everything that I thought was meant to me. And I was in a really, really dark, bad place. And I had a friend who'd gotten out of politics and opened a yoga studio. And she took me through therapeutic yoga for cancer. And I got a hold of my monkey mind, finally. It was not easy. The same thing that makes me a good analyst or a good, hypnotherapist also can take you into deep, deep, dark places. And so learning to be quiet and still and to show up for yourself every day. Show up for yourself every day. Light a candle, sit there. That's when God makes presence known. This is quiet and still. Shake the etch-a-sketch of your mind. Thoughts will come. Exhale them. Don't get caught up or upset with yourself. You know they're coming. Oh, there you are. Knew you were coming. I release you. See what I mean? Because if you beat yourself up, it's real easy. Now you're 4 layers in. Or if you get lazy, breakfast, eggs, bacon, toast, wheat, cage-free eggs. Oh, they're all cage-free. You know what I mean? Suddenly now you're 4 levels in. And so, but guess what? It's called a practice because it takes practice. It ain't easy for any of us. And for those of us with active minds, especially, it's really hard. Here's what it takes: showing up every day, consistency. I worked on my breath in through the nose, see this initially. Now there's YouTube. There are so many great tracks on YouTube. And I don't do the guided stuff. Like my favorite, there's a crackling fire with Native American drums and a flute, or Wayne Dyer's I Am, it's just a tone, just give your mind something to wrap around while you see the black screen. And getting to that black screen is what it takes to get to that black screen and be quiet and still. Now you can begin to have your body talk to itself and little parts of it, and ask, why is your stomach upset? What simple steps can I take to relieve this upset stomach? But what it takes is a decision to do it every day and to show up for yourself every day. Prayer is when you talk to God. Meditation is when you listen. And this is where we get information.
I think that's great advice. And I think that many, if not all, the answers we seek, at least on the important stuff, comes from within, right?
Our higher self.
We're always looking externally when we should be looking internally.
Totally.
Oh, that's great stuff, man. Can we talk a little bit about your written work? Your 2 books and what you got going on there?
Yeah. So the first book, Take Charge of Your Cancer: The 7 Proven Steps to Healing and Recovery. I tried for 3 years to write about my experience in a meaningful way. And I'm a writer. I wrote political speeches and analyses that, politicians used to wrote on important bills. But I was never allowed to be in my writing. And so I went through the author incubator program, and I wrote my book in 90 days. And it's part my story and part 7 things I learned that people can do. If we're looking for something you can do to be an active participant, just going to where your appointments that you're told and listening to mumbo jumbo garbage about, the scientific explanation of all this other, it's disempowering. And so learning to meditate, changing your diet, deepening your spirituality, releasing your repressed emotions, communing with your subconscious mind, having a reason to live. These are the things, and taking charge. Don't just turn yourself over to somebody in a white coat and an alphabet soup behind their name. I'm not knocking doctors. See your doctor, understand what's going on, but don't turn yourself over. You're not going to fare well. So I wanted to call it the unwrapped gift. And my publisher said, Norm, cancer probably was a gift for you, but how long did it take you to figure that out? I'm like, yeah, it took a while. She said, you got to meet people where they are. And so it became Take Charge of Your Cancer. And it's really, really directed at men who don't go to the doctor, who feel helpless, and when they get a diagnosis, and they just march their way to dead.
Been there, man.
So then the second book, Mastermind, Master Life, is, there's so many misconceptions and misperceptions about hypnosis and hypnotherapy. There's stories. Everyone's exposure is, Vegas, or, at the state fair, or high school graduation where a bunch of people were put to sleep or made to cluck like chickens. And I'm really uncomfortable by that side of it, but, it's there for a reason. It shows you how powerful it is. I'm really serious about the therapeutic uses of it. And so Mastermind, Master Life was my effort to bring it home for people. It's about, what's its history? What is it going on with it? What does science say about it? And how can you use it in your life? So I break it down in an easily understandable way, just enough science to satisfy those who need it, and just enough history for those who want to understand the context. That Benjamin Franklin was on a panel studying whether Franz Mesmer's animal magnetism was real or not. I mean, it's got a storied past, and it is very real. And it wasn't until recently where we've developed technology and machinery to be able to measure what's going on in the brain to understand what's going on. And now we do. Now we do. Here, let me show you. So Dr. David Spiegel's doing a bunch of research at Stanford, and they're measuring and they're studying so that, I mean, there's a bunch of definitions of hypnosis, and the one I like to share is because I just think it kind of legitimizes it. Here's from the American Psychological Association. Hypnosis is a state of inner absorption, concentration, and focused attention. It's like using a magnifying glass to focus the rays of the sun and make them more powerful. Similarly, when our minds are concentrated and focused, we're able to use them more powerfully. That's American Psychological Association. So from Spiegel's work, he stated that hypnotherapy is the ultimate therapeutic partnership, a relationship that forms between a patient and a clinician that empowers the patient to take ownership of their own healing. In this partnership, healing can be fully realized when patients become active participants in the development of their own therapeutic plan. And as an active participant, people feel in control of their own health and are more likely to make sustained lifestyle changes that will lead to improved health. So this research has demonstrated a drop in activity in the dorsal anterior cingulate, part of the salience network of the brain. It's a context decoder, or in layperson terms, a part of the brain that alerts you to what you should pay attention to and what you can ignore. This part of the brain, which fires up when there's something to worry about, actually calms down during hypnosis. A second change was observed in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain where you plan things and carry out routines, and the insula, the part of the brain that helps regulate body functions. These two parts of the brain began syncing up in their connectivity, like altering blood pressure and heart rate. And this suggests that during hypnosis, the brain intensifies its connection to the body. And we can see evidence of this when the hypnotized individual experiences a slower heart rate, a rhythmic breathing pattern, and with a likely correspondence and decrease in blood pressure. So science now, through functional MRIs and other measurement devices, can tell us what's going on. It's no longer just anecdotal stories from those who experienced it.
That's great stuff. Now, if someone wants to receive help from you, and I know it's probably a case-by-case situation, but I mean, how many general sessions is there? I mean, what kind of experience are they going to have? Do you do things over Zoom, or do they have to meet you at your office, or what can they expect?
I conduct sessions in my office and as well as virtually by Zoom. I've hypnotized people all over the world, as far away as New Zealand and England, Scotland, Australia. And it's about an hour, and we do a deep dive into their personal experience. We're going to cover their childhood and their family structures. I want to know how they interacted with their brothers and sisters and their mom and dad. And then I'm going to use that context to try and understand the origin of their presenting issue and come up with a plan. And it is kind of tailored and individual, but I do packages, 3, 6, and 12, and they're usually targeted at the amount of time that they've been dealing with these things, at how difficult the experience is, how big it's showing up in their life, And so all of these things are determined in the consultation, and I share with them what I think the plan should be, and there's no obligation, and they can make up their mind based on a couple things that need to be present. We need to have rapport. They need to feel like I know what I'm doing and can help them. They have to kind of like me, and they have to be willing to do the work, because many times I give homework. There's some forgiveness exercises. There's some life planning exercise. What do you want? Why do you want it? What are you going to do to get it? If you're going to write a new story, you better have some details. Otherwise, you're twisting in the wind, right? So, I am the right mix of, I'm very direct, but lovingly and compassionately. So, My story is on my website, normanplotkin.com. You can read all about me and my vision and my mission and my, what drives me and the things that I like to help people work on. And it's all there in black and white. And I'm reachable. You can schedule on my website. And my books are available on Amazon. Again, Take Charge of Your Cancer: The 7 Proven Steps to Healing and Recovery, and Mastermind, Master Life. I'm working on my 3rd book called The Compass, and it's going to be about the age of Aquarius and how we can live with emotional intelligence and with feminine energy, balancing our yin and yang so that we can excel in the age of Aquarius, which is going to be a feminine energy. And so even for women, you look at the female politicians, they try and outman the men, right? So women are going to need to reconnect with their feminine archetypal qualities of compassion, creativity, collaboration, and men are going to need to get in touch with that side of their soul as well to excel in the coming age. So it's going to be called The Compass. It'll be out in the fall.
Looking forward to that one. That's Norman Plotkin, folks. Check his work out, get his book. It could save your life. I know it's my next read. Exciting stuff. Reach out to this guy if you need help in any of these areas. It's great work you're doing, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show.
Dylan, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.